to switch over into my role because I was doing a lot of that already. So I became a recruiter 2016, um, and I haven't looked back. It's been great. I went to school here in Ann Arbor. I went to Washtenaw Community College first, and I graduated with an associate's degree. And then I moved to St. Louis to go to school there. And some things happened and that didn't work out, but then I came back and I was still with Kohl's. And then, like I said, 2016 started with Kelly. And I've had just a great experience. And for me, the thing that I like most about my job is actually helping people when it may seem like it's the end of the road, if that makes sense. So even in 2020, I was able to get people on direct hire positions, permanent jobs, and some jobs that may have started out as temp to hire, but at the end of the year, those candidates and or people that were on those jobs then got to be hired on permanently. So even through the pandemic, I was able to still change people's lives in regards to finding their forever job. So that's my story.
Thank you. Marvin or Whitney?
I'll go really quick because I've been having connection issues, so I apologize. It's something with my computer. So sorry. I actually I interviewed for the original role in TA and I was bypassed because I wasn't qualified, and I came back a year later and I was qualified and I got it. So that's how I came into Kelly. And then it worked really well with my grad school schedule at the time. So I have a bachelor's in business management, I have a master's in public administration, looking to go back for my MBA again. So I have an MPA going back for an MBA. And then I got into CWO because I wanted to possibly turn client facing. My last paper in grad school I wrote was about drug prices. So I'm looking to possibly go client facing for a drug company that Kelly represents, and a lot of people go from CWO to client facing roles. So that's why I chose and how I happen to be in the role I'm in now.
Thank you, Whitney. And I'll let Marvin take it away then.
Thank you. Yeah, so, I started recruiting when you kind of fell into recruiting, right? It wasn't, people didn't go to school and, hey, I want to be a recruiter. That was never, a real thing. It wasn't a real career path. And I'm happy to see the industry evolve to the point where people are actually thinking about, no, I actually want to go, into HR, into recruiting and other aspects of HR. So, for me, I worked at UPS for a number of years in their HR department. And part of what I did was operations, right? So I would do the quote unquote recruiting, but it was really just hosting job fairs. But once we got candidates in the door, I would give them site tours and do the orientations and the onboarding. So again, it was starting in with that HR, in that HR space, but really discovered, to Joanna's point, I enjoy helping people. I enjoy engaging and interacting with people. And that's what kind of, I stumbled into recruiting, right? But since then, even with all the roles that I've had with Kelly, I've been with Kelly 18 plus years, right? And even with all the roles that I've had with Kelly through operations and service delivery and all the other opportunities I've had, I'm in talent acquisition now. Why? Because, it gives me the opportunity to connect with people. I connect with people in a different way now. I don't necessarily actively recruit, but part of what I do day in the life is really trying to understand people's motivation, right? So how can we, look at a persona and determine, what is going to motivate that individual? Because as people don't truly understand that the market is extremely competitive, right? Especially when you start going into technical roles, it gets even more competitive, right? So how do we get to that individual and understand what their needs are and present them an opportunity, right? Not just life-changing in some ways, but career-changing, right? How do we attract them to Kelly? So that's really, if I were to boil my job down to one thing, it's truly understanding personas and creating personas and understanding how to attract people to opportunities with Kelly.
Thank you all. This was really helpful. So Joanna, I'm going to throw this question over to you, and then I'm sure Marvin and Whitney can chime in. But it sounds like you get a lot of a big picture, right? You get to look at the big picture. You're maybe looking for Kelly, but you're also looking at how are you going to be staffing all these other companies that have come to Kelly. So when you're looking here and when you're thinking about placing people, what are you looking for? What are those like skill sets? What are those maybe degrees, or what are those more popular pathways, or maybe even those roads less traveled? Like, what can you offer some insight what that looks like?
Well, for me, because I do a lot of my jobs, especially with lid, I don't the lid industry is super big in Michigan. You know, there's a lot of manufacturing, so skills trades are super important in the Michigan vicinity. I do find a lot of skill sets that require that type of experience. But then again, in my professional stuff, which is mostly like administrative, I also do like marketing. I do a lot of HR. So if you are focused on, you know, getting any HR type of background, and I know that those fields are kind of hard sometimes to get into, but honestly, recruiting is a great pathway into that, right? So that's a great pathway into getting into an HR field. And I always tell my candidates that I talk to, I do not only give them coaching in regards to like interviewing, but I also coach them about their resumes too, because my job is to, if I'm presenting them to someone else, I need to ensure that I have all of the details that are in the resume. So if it's too long, if it's too short, if it's missing information, if there's gap in employment, you know, you want to make sure you have your education on there. So I think that I don't really have a clear connect or clear answer for that, because I work in so many different jobs that it just is based on what you're looking to do with your, after you graduate and after school is over. Because I have a lot of people that, you know, they're like, well, I'm not really sure. And that's fine. You know, you may not know, but if you do know, the path to that is definitely doing something in an internship. I personally did an internship. I felt like it was great. It aided in me realizing what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do, right? So I think that definitely understanding what the job market is like, and using whatever skill set you may have obtained in any part-time job, those are important, you know, whether it's customer service, whether it's you've done clerical, those are all important factors to keep in mind. So.
Thank you. Marvin, Whitney, anything you want to add there?
My biggest client is VMware, so IT. So I would probably push skilled trades or any of the STEM programs for people looking to get into roles. I don't see those disappearing. VMware is very busy. They kind of created the work from home module. So a lot of companies that weren't prepared for work from home, they were busy in COVID when COVID really hit. So definitely IT. That's what I see the most. Any type of computer programming. There's so many variants of it that I didn't even know about, that I'm like, oh, you're filling for this role. And I work hand in hand with my program office that sits on site at VMware. So definitely IT roles would be what I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think anything in the STEM field, I mean, COVID has taught us you know, there's definitely a need for not just healthcare in terms of frontline workers, which is absolutely necessary, but in terms of, you know, more scientists, right? More researchers, more people that are going to help figure out, you know, what the next COVID looks like, right? For loss of a better term. IT is going to be critical. Technology is not going anywhere, right? Whether it's, you know, continuing to expand or remain static as far as virtual is concerned, whether that's virtual schooling, virtual work from home, whatever the virtual is, right? That is not going anywhere. Even if you wanted it to marry what Joanna does in terms of manufacturing, right? Technology is going to play a lot bigger role in manufacturing, right? So, everybody has this fear that, the robots are coming to take your job. Well, here's what I would say. Those are the hard skills, right? So if we're talking about hard skills and things that you need to, focus on for the next, 5, 10, 15 years, it would be STEM, right? The soft skills for me, what I would share with anyone that I'm having a conversation with is you have to be adaptable, right? You have to be flexible and continuous learning. If you are not continuously, I don't care what your job is, if you're not continuously learning about your job, eventually, yes, a robot will take your job because there's no value in you doing the same routine task over and over and over and over again every day. Technology is going to find a way to do that more consistently, to do it more efficiently, and to do it cheaper. Because that's the key, right? I don't care what company you work for. That is the goal, right? How can we, optimize and make processes and what we do more efficient? So you have to be adaptable, right? Because things are ever changing. 2020 taught us that things are ever changing. So if you're not adaptable, if you get stuck in, this is the way I've always done things, and any new thing that's thrown at me, I get dysregulated, you're going to struggle. So you have to be adaptable, have to be flexible, and continuous learning. I cannot stress that enough.
Thank you, Kelly team. That was very insightful and very helpful. So thank you for that. I'm going to pause for questions before handing it back to Catherine.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So I was wondering the meeting about, is it like internship or?
Yes, I think we're going to talk about that next. So I think Catherine is going to get into that next.
Because I'm a computer science student at Henry Ford, and I was wondering if I could get an internship at Kelly, because I know a friend of mine works there also.
Perfect. Well, that is a great segue then to talk about, if we could have the three of you kind of touch on what some of the opportunities are at Kelly specifically, and then, but also what some of the opportunities that you're seeing that you're recruiting for as it relates to, let's start maybe in that IT space. I think because we've had a couple questions about that now or so far. So kind of what are, yeah, because I want to be able to include some of those links about opportunities at Kelly versus opportunities that you're recruiting for other companies and some of those trends. And then also, I think we should touch on how work has kind of changed too. If you're recruiting for a lot of remote type of positions right now, or if they're in person or if it's still a mix. So I will pass it on to the three of you to do that.
I can go first. I don't recruit. I work on the back end, but I can see what clients are recruiting for. So Honda is still on site. They shut down for 2 weeks, but they are like all of the big three, adhering to protocols, temperature checks, all of that thing. They actually started new Kelly temp roles to check temperatures. So that's a new job that was created that we didn't have pre-COVID. So talking about job creation. But I do know that they are sourcing for IT roles as well as VMware does too. VMware strictly work from home until July of 2021, like Google is. Basically all of Silicon Valley is in California. So I'm happy to connect with anyone, and I can put my stuff, my LinkedIn in the chat below, and reach out to some of the VMware managers and see what they will be recruiting for through their college programs this year.
I can go next. So for me, because I recruit locally, I do a lot of administrative work. And right now in my area, we have a lot of customer service, and I haven't actually had a lot of work from home work, honestly. A lot of my stuff is in person right now. I think I've had maybe one work from home position that I recruited for. And I know a lot of people are looking for that. But what I can say is we also have our IT division and our engineering division. And I know that they are super busy. And you guys I put my LinkedIn in the chat. you guys can touch base with me there, and I can forward you to the recruiters that work in IT and in engineering, because I used to work closely with them in the office when we were in the office. So I do have their contact information.
And Joanna, are those IT and engineering roles at Kelly that you're recruiting for, or externally outside of Kelly?
Those
Or a
would
mix?
be for positions outside of Kelly, for customers that we are helping find people for. So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, what I have is not as exciting as either of my colleagues. We do a lot of internal recruiting for Kelly, right? And right now the highest demand is in sales and in recruiting. If I were to, take my pick of these are the areas we need people. The challenge with those two roles, and I know this is going to be the chicken and the egg scenario, but the challenge with those two roles, typically we're looking for some level of experience, right? Because we're asking people to come in and truly hit the ground running, meaning that we don't have a lot of time to do ramp up and a lot of training, right? So it's typically we're looking for some prior staffing experience coupled with sales. And in some cases, if we're looking for a salesperson to sell scientific solutions, we like them to have some type of science degree or background or came from research, right? Because they kind of, they understand other scientists, they can kind of walk the walk and talk the talk, right? Similarly, when we're looking for IT salespeople and recruiters, we want them to, understand, IT, right? Software and networks and hardware and that sort of thing. So, and security. So that's the challenge, right? How do you get the experience if no one gives you the experience with the roles that we have? That's why I said mine is not as exciting. Now, with that said, we do have a recruiting hub that sits in our Troy headquarters prior to COVID. And that's kind of the space that Whitney functions in, right? So, we have these large clients and we need, kind of recruitment process outsourcing staff, right? And we hire them and have them sit in this hub with some virtual roles spread out throughout the country. But that's not, the demand for that is pretty low right now. So I wouldn't even pitch that as an option. What I would say, two things. Jade and I were having some discussions about how to engage on an internship program, understanding that even in an internship program, there are a finite number of seats, right? It's, we could only house so many people, whether virtually or in person at HQ. We're also looking at some options on how we can export, if you will, that internship experience to the other individuals that may not be able to do an actual internship. So more to come on that. But the other thing I would recommend is if you have not checked the Kelly Career site, please do so, because Joanna or Whitney or we don't know all the roles that are available. I certainly don't, right? So if you check the site and you see something interesting, tag one of us, right? I put my LinkedIn information there as well. And we will try and either get you more information or point you in the right direction to, to who has that opportunity.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna put, if I don't get to it first, we'll drop that link in the chat too. But I want to follow up on that. So we do have the majority of our audience today are current college students. So between the three of you, where would you best suggest our students to start on their with Kelly today? I mean, obviously visiting the link that we just got here in the chat. And then do, say a follow-up message with one of you if you see something that you're interested in. And do you offer, I think related to that, do you offer some of that resume assistance, Joanna, if you're like in between, if you're looking at a potential client or looking to place maybe a student kind of in an entry-level role, do you do some of that resume assistance outside of that, or do you have to kind of be officially enrolled as kind of a candidate?
I'm sorry. I'm just talking away and I am not unmuted. No, you don't need to be officially enrolled to get help with your resume. That's why I put my information on there. You guys are more than welcome to connect with me. I help people rebuild their resumes all the time because that is part of my job. Sometimes I don't have time because I am super busy, but with filling, trying to get candidates and trying to get people started to work. But I manage myself with a calendar, so it's very easy to kind of connect with me and set some time apart. And I can help with any resume issues and or concerns that you may have and or questions, in regards to resume. What was the other question? I'm sorry.
Actually, I also forgot my original question. But I really just wanted to see kind of like where do you think, following today, once we wrap up today's conversation, what would you say would be your recommendations for immediate next steps for students?
I would say
Kelly.
definitely connecting with all of us on LinkedIn would be great because I use it all the time. And then obviously if you're wanting to have a one-on-one conversation with us, you can connect with us there and we can schedule a time to sit down and or do video or phone, whichever is easiest. And Marvin is right. The Kelly Services Career, that site, it has so many opportunities on there that I don't always have the information for, but I can definitely connect you to the person that is the recruiter for that position. So definitely going on there and seeing what may be open. And I'm not sure if there's a different site for the actual Kelly jobs because there may, like where you work internally for Kelly, because I think there may be.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure what the site is. If one of you guys can help me with that.
Yeah, no,
'Cause-
yeah, I'll make sure that we
yeah.
get that.
Oh, sorry,
information.
Mark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, and
It's at the
obviously
back.
going on there too. So,
The Kelly internal page is at the bottom. So you can see what we're recruiting for at our clients, and that will give you a distance. If you go to careers at the very bottom of kellyservices.com, that will pull you to the internal page. That will be any of those job postings are strictly for Kelly.
And so to follow up on that too, if I'm a student that's looking at some of these opportunities because I'm graduating soon or I see something that might be able to serve as an internship, do you recommend applying for it and then reaching out to you, or say, hey, I'm interested in this role, can you tell me more about it first, maybe before I apply? Kind of what do you think about that sort of approach?
I personally would apply first and then reach out to one of us. Unfortunately, because I don't do recruiting, I know a lot of the recruiters still because I came from TA. Some of them are roles that are internally, and I can get you into the right hands if it's an internal role. If it's with a customer, I can kind of track down who might be recruiting, or Juana might be able to be a better that because that's her field. So I can, at least one of us can get you either internally or externally and see who's recruiting for that role between the three of us.
Yeah, and here's what I would add to that too. We are three of many, right? So if I were a student trying to figure out, hey, what's my best way to kind of, leverage these relationships, I would cast the widest net possible. And here's what I mean. I'm going on LinkedIn and I'm typing in Kelly or Kelly and recruiter, and I'm as many names, and you can break it down by location. If you're local to this geographic area, I would type in, Detroit metro area, and whatever names are that pops up, I am reaching out to all of them. I want to connect. Hey, I'm a student. I am looking to get into the workforce. I'm trying to figure this out, and I'm just connecting with everybody. Will everybody respond? Probably not. But if you get 5, 6, 8, 10 people to respond, now you have 13 people in your network that you can leverage to, help you on this journey. So, we're three of many. That would be my recommendation. LinkedIn is a very, very powerful tool if used correctly.
And on another note, when you're searching, it's because so many companies are working from home until the summertime, type in campus recruiter, because even though I don't believe Kelly has campuses recruiters at this time, or we don't anymore, there's a lot of companies that do, and you never know who you might connect with, and maybe they don't. Like for me, I was passed up by a role, and I stayed in touch with that recruiter and someone who's been with Kelly for 25 years. And a year later, it worked better with my schedule, and I had the experience that they were looking for.
Right.
So because you're turned down one year doesn't mean, another year you might be able to go into that role. And now I've been at Kelly for 2.5 years. So it's crazy how the world works.
Yes, and so that's part of, that's what I've also put in the chat here. We have a whole little profile about Kelly on the Let's Detroit website, as well as links to a few of our other ambassadors. And that's both, all of our guests today are speaking to that point of putting yourself out there and reaching out to people. And that's what we want you to use LinkedIn and Let's Detroit for, and these connections that we're on the same call today. So with these people. So want you to encourage you to keep doing that. So,
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different ways to keep doing that.
If I just may add one more thing to it, the thought just dawned on me. It took me some time to really figure out how to build a good LinkedIn page, right? So as you're connecting with folks, look at their page, and see what it looks like, right? And not from a skills and experience standpoint, but compare, that visual, right? What are they writing in their summary? How are they presenting, their experience and different pieces of content? What kind of, photos are they using, right? And make sure that your LinkedIn page looks good and reads well, because I don't know a recruiter in this industry that doesn't go to LinkedIn as their first source. I would look at your LinkedIn before I look at your resume, to be quite honest with you, because there's some pieces up there that I'm trying, information I'm trying to glean that I can go back to the resume and kind of, understand your journey. But LinkedIn is probably where I would go first. So just keep that in mind as you're starting to reach out and build your network and make these connections. Make sure that, your LinkedIn page looks good, reads well.
Cool, thanks for that. I'm adding that to our notes. So as well, Jade, well, actually I can pass on to Jade, or I can open it up actually to anyone else that might want to ask a question here. I know Janet, you had a couple of things too in the chat. You're welcome to ask your questions if you'd like, or we can open it up to anyone else.
My only question is, are there any podcasts or maybe any particular social media pages? Or I know Marvin, you mentioned looking at other pages. Are there any resources though that you all recommend that any college students should start looking at now so they can get better prepared to get in these particular industries?
That is a super question. I have a ton, but it's for where I am, in my space, right? Yeah. That's a great question. I would have to give that one some thought and probably circle back with, with you both. But again, if I'm thinking as a person trying to, launch into the workforce, start my career, we can do a whole thing on interview prep, but there's a ton of really, really good, videos out there on YouTube about not just interview prep, but how do you interview in this new world that we're in, right? Over video. I looked at one last week and it taught me that I am doing this all wrong, and I'm still doing it wrong because I haven't applied anything that I learned last week about lighting and where to position your camera and where to look at. I mean, there's a host of different, because it's different when you're engaging with someone in person, right? They're there, they're present, and you make eye contact. And but this video thing, man, and it is what it what our world is right now. So that would be my first recommendation. Take a look at what's out there in terms of video presence. But I would have to do a little bit more thinking in terms of podcasts and other recommendations.
That is totally fine. Catherine sends a follow-up email, so we'll loop you all in before adding those resources.
I have a friend who's a former recruiter for Google, and she branched on her own. She gives a lot of free advice. She does do a program, which obviously I know kids being in college is not feasible, but she gives a lot of great stuff on her Instagram as well as her LinkedIn. So I'll drop her name in the chat. And it's all free advice.
Perfect. And then I'm going to include a link to Joanna's blog that she wrote for us a couple of months ago too, kind of related to this topic on Let's Detroit, with also a few hyperlinks in there about interviewing and entering kind of the remote workforce or doing your interviews remotely and what that looks like. So thanks for.
And believe it or not, Indeed can really be your friend. They've really expanded it's not just for looking for a job anymore. There are lots and lots of links there in tools and advice. And just because we're in a kind of a new world in regards to hiring and things like that. So I would definitely take a look there as well.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I think we might pause here then, or kind of officially wrap up here, and just maybe stay on for any more lingering questions. And I will email out our kind of slide deck with that compiles all of these links in our chat, so that we can keep connected between all of us. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, I just want to, definitely want to say thank you to the three of you for sharing your advice today and sharing more about what you do so that we could understand Kelly a little bit more too. As one of our, Kelly's one of the major company in our region. So we were really excited to have you today and learn more about the options. And so definitely want to encourage everyone to stay connected with our three guests today. And follow up with them, reach out to us if you want, if you need some suggestions or advice on reaching out. But just want to say thank you all for being here, and thanks for taking the time for yourselves to be here and learn more.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for being here.
Happy
Thank
to
you,
do it.
everyone.
Happy to do it.